doom state is my term for the scope for you to be doomed without necessarily knowing it. You might know it, but basically there are games where if you finish level 1, then you start level 2 on even footing with everyone else who finished level 1, and you're fine. There's no way you can be doomed. If level 2 is completable, you can complete it. And then there are games where you bring some persistent state with you, like your health, and you can be potentially doomed because you don't have enough to get through the next thing. And so A, there are games where you have persistent state and games where you don't. And then B, in games with a persistent state, there are some games where it's always possible to win. You're never truly actually doomed. Like, for example, Hades. I think I'm right in saying that if you make it, to a level with 1 health, it's always possible to complete the level. Like, if you just don't take any damage, you'll still win. But it's very difficult to avoid entirely taking damage. And so you're sort of, maybe you're 90% doomed. You're not 100% doomed. XCOM is, for me, God, that comes up a lot in design talk, doesn't it? XCOM is one of the big things that I don't like about it, especially if you're recommending it to a new player, is that there's a lot of doom state that you can get yourself into. There's a lot of, and especially it's hidden doom state. It's you didn't build enough satellites early on, and now your economy is just shit, and you don't have the economy to fix your economy, and that's a strategic layer decision, something you make about how you build your base back at the on the globe map and the stuff that's between the actual tactical missions. But it will eventually destroy you in the tactical missions too, because you don't have enough resources to kind of keep your people healthy and give them the better equipment and get your research up and all this other stuff. So that kind of thing, hidden doom state, is I think poison. It's something I will always want to avoid in games I make. And Tactical Breach Wizards, the game I'm working on at the moment, is very heavily inspired by XCOM, but that was a starting principle for it, was you can't doom yourself. There's no decision you can make that will leave you screwed in the rest of the campaign. And not just in the sense that, like, let's not make your decisions too powerful, let's make it so you can only be 90% doomed. In Tactical Breach Wizards, you can't be doomed at all, really. The choices we let you make are things like you can get perks for your characters, so like upgrade a certain ability, like get an extra effect, like it does more damage or it does something else on top of the damage. And those, sure, you could probably make some choices that don't sync together well, but even then, most of them are not really like, it's not like Slay the Spire where you're trying to fine-tune your deck into this delicate machine where every part needs to feed into every other part, or it's not going to keep up with the rest of the game and you're doomed. The game is designed, in fact, it will pretty sure be completable if you don't take any perks at all, if you just don't spend any of those points. I don't think there'll ever be a reason that you fundamentally can't complete a mission. And there are downsides to that, because there's also, and I've been noticing this much more in action games. There's an audience for doom state in strategy games. A lot of XCOM players love that you can doom yourself, and that's part of the game is you've got to, by trial and error, learn what you must do early on in the strategy layer in order to keep pace and still succeed in the tactical layer. But that's not for me. But I do like it in, well, roguelikes is an obvious one, because that's almost the definition that, within a run of a roguelike, you have to have some persistent state that you're carrying on. Otherwise, it's kind of not a roguelike, I would say. I won't make that claim as like a definition type thing, like a semantic thing. But certainly, I can't imagine ever designing a roguelike where you don't have any persistent state that you take from one level to the next, where your character's hard reset. I would almost say that's a new run at that point. And it's much more accepted there, that, especially like that you keep losing health, and that sources of healing are rarer and sometimes never full. Like in Hades, even the fountain at the end of a chapter doesn't fully heal you unless you have a certain perk. It's only going to heal a certain amount, and that might be less than what you need. And so you take some of your doomedness into the next chapter as well. And I think that's actually good for roguelikes. And it might also be good for something like Diablo, because I was playing Diablo recently, and the thing I was noticing, and I had this with Path of Exile as well, is that the health regen is extremely generous. And that doesn't mean the game is easy, although it is for a very long time, very easy. But it means it's a particular kind of difficulty where basically for 8 hours I never see my health bar go down. I just don't. If I'm taking damage, it's replenished so fast that I don't even know it happened, and the game feels just completely trivial. It's easy in the literal sense that I'm never dying and I'm not struggling, but also it's worse than that because I'm not even having the impression of difficulty. In XCOM, there are easy missions in XCOM. When things are going well in terms of your squad composition and everything, and the missions haven't kept pace with that, you have a bunch of missions in XCOM that just go textbook. They're just like everything goes well, no one takes a hit, you deal with every enemy, and I'm playing on a difficulty that probably is too low for me. But the point is, in XCOM, I love that. That's great. I'm always like having a great time when that's happening because I'm never complacent in XCOM. And XCOM has a load of uncertainty, and it's turn-based, and you have time to think about everything, so you do think about everything. And even when the last mission was trivially easy, I never took any damage, I still, on this mission, we could all die any moment. It's how I feel. Might not be literally true, but I'm going to very carefully inch my people forwards and be totally engaged in it. And when it goes well, I'm like, yes, awesome, like tension, and then release. Brilliant. But in something like Diablo or Path of Exile, I'm, bashing all these monsters, and it feels fairly good, but if my health bar is never going down, my impression is that I'm not even close to being in any kind of danger here. So I am complacent. There is no tension. I'm not worried about what's going to happen here. And that, firstly, that's bad in itself. Secondly, when you do eventually hit the difficulty curve, like for me in both those games, there is a point at which finally, literally 8 hours in, I hit a boss that actually can do enough damage in one hit that I notice it. And that often is extremely close to the moment at which I'm actually kind of screwed. My build actually has been falling behind the curve for a long time, but I couldn't tell because every performance was effectively perfect. There was no difference between a fight where the enemies were doing an average of 800 DPS to me and I was restoring 1000 DPS, and a fight where the enemies were doing 100 DPS to me and I was restoring 1000. There's a huge difference there, but I can't see it because my health bar is at maximum, so I'm just it appears to me that I'm taking no damage. And I can't see the train coming, the difficulty train that's going to hit me in the face. As it's approaching, there is no warning about that. I'm just seeing a full health bar the entire time. And then when it hits me, it's kind of already too late. Now the enemies are doing 1,200 DPS and I'm healing 1,000 DPS, or maybe I'm healing 1,100 DPS by that point. But that's not enough, so I'm just losing health all the time, and sometimes you're losing all of your health at once, because especially when health regen is high relative to health max, that's a really bad state, because once you fall behind the curve, once something can kill you, it's not even because it's outpacing your health regen, it's just because it kills you in one hit, and that's the worst way to die. It's just like, what the hell just happened? And that's usually a boss, of course, and so that's exactly how it went with Path of Exile. I was fine, then one boss can just kill me in one hit, and oh, I can't defeat that boss because I don't have any other coping mechanisms. The fact that I'm invincible, to be honest, I was relying on that. That was working pretty well. So I don't like that for those kinds of games. And actually Risk of Rain 2 has this as well, and maybe Risk of Rain 1 did, although I don't remember it being that way. There's so much health regen that you don't know you're failing until you've already completely failed. And then there's actually a third reason it's bad to have a lot of health regen, which is that there's no differences between the fights. So even within an easy game, you can have fights where, ooh, that one I came, 10% of the way to being defeated. If I lost 10% of my health in a fight in Hades, that's not a catastrophe, but ow. Versus a fight where I lose no health. There's a difference there. That fight was harder than this one. So that's a good learning opportunity, as I said. You want to know about it. If you ever start to fall slightly behind the curve, you want to know right away, oh shit, that didn't go as well as last time. What am I doing wrong? Am I, should I have taken a different upgrade? Am I playing badly? That kind of stuff. But also it's just interestingly different. It's just texture. Just, even if you've made every right decision and you're playing to the best of your ability, having one room where yikes, that was tough. That mini-boss was brutal. I lost a load of health. And now I've got to, over the course of the next few fights, slowly eke it back by playing very carefully and making sure I don't lose any health. That's just texture. That's variety, and that's good. So All of which is not to say that we're going to go in that direction with Breach Wizards, because I think first of all, the sort of focus of that game is to tell a story and take you on a journey with these characters and get to know them, and I want you to care about them and invest in them and upgrade them. That's why there's those perks. And tailor them to your tastes and have opinions about which abilities you like and which ones you don't, and specialize in the ones you do like and find synergies between them, and especially find synergies between wizards where like, oh, if this one can do this and that one can do that, now we're talking. I want all of that, but it doesn't suit persistent doom state, because one thing we could do, the lightest kind of doom state we could do, is a mission is made up of several encounters within a building. You sort of clear one room, then that's over, then you clear another room, and between those, you go back to full health, and there's a set amount of mana you start each encounter with, and you go back to that as well. Nothing carries over from between those rooms, no matter how badly you did in the last room. If you completed it at all, then you start the next one at full health. And actually, even whether you all have to survive is kind of up in the air at the moment. You didn't originally. I think currently you do need all your wizards to be alive at the end. And alive is a misnomer, really, because in our game, no one dies. Everyone is only ever knocked out. If all of your attacks are non-lethal on the enemies, they will shoot you with guns, but even then, it's like you're sort of incapacitated. If we got you to a hospital, you'd be fine. So I don't know yet when I'm going to allow you to just like, oh, one wizard was knocked out, but the other one made it through. You've won. They're fine for the next mission. It's a bit of a stretch that they're fine right away. I mean, there's some kind of magic to that. But yeah, so one reason to do that is separately from Doom State, that allows you to have texture. You can have a mission that goes badly, but you got through it. Whereas if any wizard going down ever is the end of the game, then you only have missions you failed and missions you won. There's only two states. Whereas if some of them can go down and you still complete it, you can have these desperate runs of like, oh, they went down, but we got that out there. Maybe there's a sort of like quick revive thing. The problem is there is a character whose ability is specifically about this, and so the way it probably makes sense to do it is to have it like once that character's in your party, then yes, you can revive anybody at the end of a mission. But yeah, the reason I am not toying with the idea of like damaged wizards are still damaged at the start of the next encounter, or even incapacitated wizards, you don't get them in the next encounter, which I think that might be how Chimera Squad works, the XCOM game. I can't remember, so no quote me on that. But I don't do that because you can be screwed. It sucks to be doomed. And when that's not the focus of the game, then it doesn't really make sense. And Chimera Squad, definitely one thing it does have for sure is consumables that are per mission, not per encounter. And that means that if you use them on the first encounter, you might be doomed in the later ones. But you don't know, because you don't know what you're going to face in the later encounters. And so you go into it thinking, not in a great state, and then if it turns out to be a tough one, you're just like, oh yeah, I am doomed. So now I've got to replay the entire mission from the start. And that sucks. That's just bad. I don't think that's good. Obviously, the upside they're going for is like push you to think about when to use these things. Make decisions, strategic decisions on is now the time to use this resource. We'll use it at some point, but is this really as bad as it's going to get? But I don't like that kind of strategic decision because there's 90% unknown. What's on the other levels? Okay, we could assume they're going to get harder because it's a video game, but actually that's not true in practice a lot of the time. And when it is true, when they do get harder, how much harder is the ball game? That's everything. And you don't know that. You don't know. There are some where the curve's quite gentle. There are some where there's just a boss that's insanely difficult, and you needed all of your resources for that. And so, of course, another reason this is not a great pattern, I don't think, is that it feeds into a famous player neurosis, which is save your resources, don't spend anything. And when you introduce 90% uncertainty into that call, then our risk-averse natures push us even further into, okay, I just won't use anything then. I just won't use any of my fun abilities until the very last mission, when sometimes it turns out I didn't need them anyway. And other times it's like, oh, well, I am in trouble, but actually this particular ability doesn't help in this particular situation, or it's not enough, and it just seems like a bad fit overall. So basically that's a degree of doom state that I don't think is appropriate for our game, but I do think it has a really important role especially in action games where you're never truly doomed, just for adding variety, texture, letting you feel the difficulty curve approaching before it slams you in the face and completely destroys your run, and just making one encounter different to the next.